Now we are going to go back and talk about Chapter 3, our food supply. As always, I will encourage you to review the learning objectives. We start by discussing food availability and access. As you probably can understand based on the content from the rest of this course, good nutrition status and health both require access to safe as well as healthy food. Agriculture does produce enough food to provide all the people in the world with probably close to 3,000 kilocalories per day. And yet, 1 in 9 people are undernourished and 2 billion people suffer from micronutrient deficiencies. So this is referred to as hidden hunger. Hunger and malnutrition are, of course, most common in the developing world, but we will also talk about malnutrition in industrialized countries. Malnutrition and hunger are the reason for over half of the world's diseases. Malnutrition can be both under or overnutrition, and overnutrition will lead over time to overweight and obesity. And this is the type of malnutrition that is more commonly seen in industrialized countries. The World Health Organization, or WHO, estimates that 1.9 billion people globally are overweight or obese. So as developing countries become more westernized, their diets increase in meat and dairy, and along with them sugar, fat, processed foods, and alcohol. And the diets tend to decrease in whole grains, veggies, and fruit. This phrase is known as nutrition transition. For those whose energy intake falls below needs, they are likely to see, over time, physical and mental activity declining, growth slowing or ceasing, muscle and fat wasting, a weakened immune system, and an increased risk of death. This figure from your text demonstrates how inadequate access to safe and healthy food can spiral into illness and even death. Now, even when calories are adequate, but micronutrient intake is impaired, those deficiencies can be devastating on their own. The micronutrients that are most likely to be deficient in populations in developing countries are vitamin A, iodine, iron, zinc, and folate. In the United States, the Department of Agriculture monitors food security. Food security is defined as the access by all people at all times to enough food for an active, healthy life, whereas food insecurity is a lack of this access, and that contributes to serious health and nutritional problems. Food insecure individuals end up eating fewer servings of those nutrient-dense foods. They tend to rely on foods to which they have easy access, which are less expensive, and are often poorer quality in terms of nutrition. Often they consume more energy-dense diets. Many of the foods that are available in food pantries or that are less expensive that they buy themselves in the grocery stores or when they perhaps go to the dollar menu, etc., tend to be processed foods, and again, higher in fat and calories, lower in vital micronutrients. So these nutrient-poor diets can impair both physical and mental health. These types of foods also often can lead to obesity over time. This again has to do with the types of foods that are most easily accessible or most affordable in most cases. There are particular consequences for food insecure children. The data shows that they have higher incidence of asthma, stomach aches, and headaches, as well as colds. Often their growth development is impaired. They experience more behavioral problems in school, as well as lower educational achievement. They also have higher rates of depression and suicide. and increased levels of psychological distress overall. Another potential consequence is that parents in a food insecure household often compromise their own diets to give a portion of what would otherwise be their own ration of food, as it were, to their kiddos. And of course, that has the ripple effect of compromising their own health in an attempt to improve that of their children. So as indicated before, the United States Department of Agriculture monitors food insecurity. And there are 4 levels of household food security. At a high level of food security, the food needs of all members of the household are met at all times. At marginal low or very low levels of food security, households run out of food at certain times or manage food supplies by either skipping meals or reducing the size of meals so that they tend to be inadequate, or sometimes just simply not eat even though they're hungry. Here you can see some more details regarding those different levels of food security and the frequency with which food security is compromised. As you might suspect, food insecurity is very closely linked to poverty. 13.5% of the population in the states live at or below the poverty guidelines, which indicate a $24,600 annual income supporting a family of 4. Living in a food desert can limit access to healthy foods. A food desert is the term for geographic areas where fresh, affordable, healthy foods can't be purchased easily. Often these are locations where grocery stores are far away and inaccessible, and therefore residents tend to rely on convenience food stores and or fast food for their regular meals. We also have this figure from your textbook indicating levels of food insecurity, and the darker the shade of orange, the higher the levels of food insecurity in that region. There are a lot of programs in the United States that aim to increase food security. These are governmental programs, and they provide food assistance to individuals and families. So there are 15 of these government-supported programs nationally. They are administered by the United States Department of Agriculture, and they actually account for more than 2/3 of the USDA budget. 25% of Americans participate in at least one of the programs, so usage is a lot higher than what most people might suspect. Some of the programs that aim to increase food security are ones that you may be familiar with already or have heard of and maybe not known exactly what they are. The Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, or SNAP, is what used to be called food stamps. Now SNAP benefits are utilized just by running a card. It looks just like a credit card, so people don't have to bring in food stamps anymore. The Special Supplemental Nutrition Program for Women, Infants, and Children is more commonly known as WIC, and pregnant or lactating moms or moms of young ones, who, especially if they are still breastfeeding, they get higher amounts of food support, but and then their children up to the age of 5 who qualify can utilize this program. The National School Lunch and School Breakfast programs are related to enhancing food security in the U.S. Child and Adult Care Food Program is another example. Several programs for seniors, including Meals on Wheels, Senior Farmers Market Nutrition Programs, and Congregate Meal Programs, and then food distribution programs such as food banks and pantries, all have as a central goal of their programming to increase food security in the United States. Of course, there are also hunger relief charitable programs, which are private programs that provide food assistance. And again, food banks and pantries, some of these are private as opposed to government supported. Soup kitchens and homeless shelters also fit into this category. 37 million people obtain food from these programs annually. And the largest contributor is Feeding America. So a lot of local food banks fall under the Feeding America umbrella. This table from your textbook, I think, is a nice, simple snapshot regarding how you as an individual can help to fight hunger in your community. Something else I want to mention is that at Cal Poly, we have a program in place where people can donate up to 10 of their Cal Poly Dining Services meals each quarter. So if you're on a meal plan and you have meals and don't typically use all of them by the end of the quarter, you can donate those. So again, up to 10 each quarter. And it's a meal voucher program. You can probably pretty easily just find it if you kind of Google Cal Poly meal vouchers, but it's a relatively new program. So if you're interested in learning more, I am involved in a committee that helps to make these meals accessible to students. And so I have more information that I can share with you if you would be interested. Next, we'll talk about food insecurity and malnutrition in the developing world as opposed to focusing just on the United States. Most hungry people in developing countries live in more rural areas, and they're either unemployed or they work as subsistence farmers. Farming can be very difficult in many regions because of poor quality farmlands, and poor health is caused by that food insecurity, and that then limits the farmers' physical capabilities and ability to work, therefore sort of putting them in this cycle of food insecurity because they can't grow adequate amounts of food then to feed their family. Food shortages as well as famine can be caused, of course, also by natural disasters or war or just political unrest. And then famine disrupts every aspect of life. Rates of disease and death will increase, jobs disappear, and so unemployment increases. Poverty gets worse, crime gets worse, civil wars can break out, and government corruption often prevents relief efforts from being successful and getting the aid to the people in most need. Therefore, economic developments to reduce poverty and improve local agriculture productivity is really key in combating this issue of food insecurity in developing countries. Economic development can ensure that households can grow more crops and eat healthier diets, and also earn an income from the extra crops that they grow, thus further enhancing their food security levels. Increasing agricultural productivity is, of course, costly and complex. So it's not a simple process to get there. It requires infrastructure, agricultural research, education, as well as a healthy population. So in countries where this is most needed, the population is typically already compromised because of food insecurity and poverty. So again, it's sort of this endless cycle. But in the next section of our lecture, we are going to talk about food production and look at sort of some more optimistic sides of these critical issues.